From my April 4th, 2004 LiveJournal entry. I love driving home from Honolulu and listening to Something Corporate's North. It'll always remind me of that drive, I think. I realized tonight that some of those songs can be interpreted much differently than I'd originally imagined. Hey there, I'm Steve, and you're listening to the Something in the Wilderness podcast, a show that allows me to tell you all about my favorite songs by Andrew McMahon, and sometimes I even talk about the ones that aren't my favorites. Sometimes I have a guest, but today I'm intentionally solo. Although I'd love to hear what you think about the song, I always knew I had to do this one alone because it's so personal to me. More on that later. I've mentioned before here that song placement on an album is really important. I love noticing the way that songs flow in and out of each other throughout an album. And so I've always put a lot of thought into the mixtapes, mix CDs, and, well, nowadays, playlists that I've made. But the first song on an album or a playlist, it really sets the tone, because it's the introduction, right? Shockingly, I don't think I've ever put the song I'm talking about today on any mix for myself or for anyone, except for my specific Andrew McMahon mixes. It's so special to me, and as much as I love it, I just can't imagine it appearing anywhere else but as the opener on this particular album. So I've talked about how I view the album North as a whole on the Break Myself episode. So it might help you if you haven't listened to that one to go back and hear what I had to say there. As meaningful to me as the middle of the album is, my favorite Something Corporate song of all time is actually not included in that middle set of songs on North. So today, unlike any episode before this, I'm going on record to say that this is one of my favorites, if not my very favorite Something Corporate song of all time. I'll even go so far as to say it could be my favorite Andrew McMahon song of all time. I know that's a bold statement 26 songs into the podcast, but my connection to this song has been 2 decades long, and I still feel the same way. It was my favorite song when I first heard the album in fall 2003, and it's still my favorite song 18 years later. So I think we can make it official today. Yes, As You Sleep gets its own pedestal in my heart, and I wonder if there's anyone out there listening who feels the same. I'll also state here that, like many songs in our lives, the lyrics probably mean something different to me than what they meant to Andrew when he wrote them, and they probably mean something different to you too. The band is of course Something Corporate. I'm talking about As You Sleep, track 1 on North, released on October 21st, 2003. From a review of North in the Louisville Cardinal in 2003, student journalist Jenna French had this to say about the album.
Every band reaches a point in its career where it must produce a groundbreaking new album. It must be enough like the other albums that longtime fans can appreciate it, but different enough to show improvement. For most artists, that CD is the turning point in their musical history where they could either go forward or stop going altogether. For Orange County-based Something Corporate, 2003's release North was the CD that they needed.
I agree with this sentiment for sure, and it saddens me all over again that it would be their final album. Jenna went on to write,
Lead singer Andrew McMahon has a distinctive voice that communicates feeling in an ideally simple way. North is different from the first release in the sense that it shows maturity in both lyrics and music.
This is the third song I've covered from the North album, what I consider to be one of the best albums of all time. So if you've been listening, you've heard me gush about it already. You also know that then Jim Wirt produced this album. Andrew wrote more than half the songs on North, including this one. North would be Something Corporate's first and only full-length non-comp album to be released through Geffen Records, in partnership with Drive-Thru Records. The album, including this track, was recorded at Robert Lang Studios in Seattle, Washington. Just like the rest of the album, though, we have Andrew on piano and vocals, Brian Ireland on drums, Kevin Clutch Page on bass, and Josh Partington and William Tell on guitar. All 4 of the other musicians in Something Corporate get credit in the liner notes for backing vocals, but I'm not sure who actually sings backup on this particular song. To me, though, this was such a different sound than their prior album. It's more orchestral and much more of a full integrated sound in every track. On As You Sleep especially, the guitar isn't always front and center like it is on many other Something Corporate tracks. According to Setlist FM, As You Sleep has been played 61 times total in concert, and somehow I've missed every single one of them. They did play it at the Live at the Ventura show, which was released on DVD back in 2004, so I have been able to enjoy that version over and over again. I have the DVD, but you can find the performance on YouTube. I'll link it in the show notes. I had noted here that Andrew played the song on a live stream on May 20th, 2020, and for a while I was so confused because I couldn't for the life of me remember that. So I put it out to the We Are the Pop Underground Facebook fan group a while back, and someone there was able to clarify this for me. Although his May 20th set is listed on Setlist FM, I actually didn't get to watch it because it was a private Zoom event. I'm not sure if I had the opportunity to pay for it, but if I did have that opportunity, I should have taken it, so now I'm regretting it if that was the case. But I truly don't remember. I really hope that one day I can track down a video or even audio of that performance because I'd love to hear it. The set list was pretty good that night. The good news, though, is that there is a fantastic piano-only version of this song on YouTube that you and I can watch. It was recorded live at Quad Studios in New York City in 2003. I'll link that one in the show notes, as it's pretty close to what we'd probably see if he performed it piano-only on a live stream today. Of course, I'd love to see this song return to the set, but I know that Andrew has a plethora of fan favorites to play in concert. Maybe fans will get a nice surprise this fall tour, or better yet, maybe I'll get to hear it on the Rock Boat in November. I'm crossing my fingers on that one. So described by one album reviewer as, quote, a testament to love, we can assume that Andrew wrote this as a love song to Kelly. From one commenter on songmeanings.com, quote, well, I'm pretty sure this song is about leaving his girlfriend Kelly to go record North for a pretty long time. He's stuck in Seattle, Washington, while she's, I assume, in Dana Point, California. In this song, which is kind of a lullaby to her, he wants her to know that he's always thinking of her, and even though he can't physically be there for her, he's there with her in spirit and he loves her. But some people interpret this song differently. Check this one out. Again, from songmeanings.com, a different commenter stated, quote, his loved one is dying, and she begins to close her eyes in sleep. The image of the man shimmers and waves away like they do in the movies. Then she passes away as she watches, the night sky fading red. When he sat in the hospital room, he tried to comfort her. He told her not to wake up, because when she passes away, she wouldn't be in any pain any longer. As his loved one passes away, he tells her that even though he's leaving her because she dies, he says, you won't be leaving me. It's a clear night, and as he drives home from the hospital, and even the radio can't keep his mind off of her. He then looks up at the sky through the windshield. In the space of it all, he feels small as he realizes he's all alone now. Well, I found this interpretation really dramatic and poetic, and it's about as different from my own interpretation as Andrew possibly meant it. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to track down any quotes from Andrew on the writing of this song, or even any of his thoughts on it, so I can only assume what this could be about, based on my own interpretation and the opinions of others out there on the internet. But I do know what it means for me. I'm going to go back to a time in my life for a few minutes that you may have heard me mention before if you're a regular listener here. In 2003, I decided to move to Hawaii to have my life's adventure. I'd already made the decision long before North came out, but probably due to the timing of the album's release and my actual move out to Hawaii just after Christmas that year, this album will forever be linked to that time of my life. Before that, I had spent some time in Hawaii in 2001 for a college program, and I had the absolute time of my life. The experience and the culture there had such an impact on me, and I knew I had to get back and live there for a while. I also knew that I wanted to get married and have kids eventually, and if I didn't move there right after college, I'd probably never do it. I didn't want to regret it later. I didn't know a single soul out in Hawaii when I moved there. Fortunately, through some Yahoo groups, think meetup.com, I met some great people. Krish, who was a professor and researcher at the University of Hawaii, originally from India. Then there was Carrie, who had been a young businesswoman in New York City. She'd made enough money to quit her good-paying full-time job and go live in different places around the world. Krish and Carrie became pretty good friends of mine while we were all out there. I met even more people through Krish, as he was pretty well connected around the UH campus in the downtown area. He also did amateur comedy on Thursday nights, and he and his friends showed me some of the hot spots around Honolulu. Just a few of the other characters I met during that time was Jim, a local lawyer, and a woman whose name escapes me, but she kind of looked like Nicole Kidman, so that's how I always remember her. Looking back, some of these people seem like characters in a movie that I watched a long time ago. They were a large part of my life for those months during 2004. Then they were gone. Social media wasn't as present and such an innate part of our culture back then, so the expectation wasn't that you friended everyone you met. Krish and I still email from time to time, as he's now settled down in India with a wife and children, so he kind of gives me the perspective from the other side of the world here and there. Anyway, I lived about 25 to 30 minutes outside of Honolulu for most of the time I lived there. So unlike most of the people I hung out with in the city, I had a bit of a drive after the night was over, which was sometimes the early hours of the morning. There's no song that reminds me of those drives back to Eva Beach late at night more than As You Sleep. I remember the stars, the moon, seeing the city behind me in the rear view, looking at the mountains to the north. It was so peaceful. Ironically, for as much as I loved living in Hawaii, I knew it wouldn't last long almost as soon as I arrived. I admit, I had a temporary mentality about the situation for most of the time I was there. The teaching job I had was very difficult, which didn't help matters. But the main thing was that it was just too far from everyone I knew and loved. So, I lived it up as much as possible when I wasn't working. Honestly, every weekend was like a vacation. And I even enjoyed myself during the week whenever there was an opportunity. I was living life to the fullest on my island in the sun, while all the people I knew on the mainland were sleeping. So my own interpretation or relation to the song looks at the lyrics a little differently than anyone else's I've read about, and most likely different from Andrew's himself. But that's the beauty of lyrics and poetry, right? The writer writes these words, and the listener or the reader gets to decide what these words mean to them. So when I hear this song, it's obviously about my time in Hawaii to me. I consider this song an essential part of my life soundtrack. Looking around at all the beauty of Hawaii, including the nature, the people I had the pleasure of spending time with, the experiences I had, I knew I'd be leaving there, but the island would never leave me. It still hasn't, not by a long shot. My experiences in Hawaii are very much a part of who I am today. It wasn't just moving out there for 7 months. It was the adventure and the challenge of a lifetime. A goal I had for years that was achieved. Something most people will never have the ability to do. It was something I did on my own, without anyone's assistance or guidance. It was something I felt I had to do. I know in my heart, had I not gone out there back then to live there for a little while, I would have regretted it to this day. Sure, I'd like to return one day, and maybe I will, and maybe you'll even hear about it if you keep listening to the show with me. But I don't think I have to go back, because those experiences are a part of me. Swimming in the ocean, singing in my car late at night, just driving around the island just for fun. I was singing to that island. I had the island with me in my heart, so that even when I left, it would never leave me. I specifically remember one night when Jim the lawyer had to drive me all the way home. He had a high-rise apartment overlooking Honolulu, so it was pretty out of the way for him. He rolled the top of his convertible down. It was a humid night, but the breeze was cooler as we went on. I have this vivid picture in my head of what it was like to lean my head back and stare at the open sky on the way home that night. I knew at the time that this couldn't last forever, but I was going to soak it in so I could take it with me forever. I'd be curious to hear your interpretation of this song, as it's certainly much different than my own. From allwomentalk.com, author Lindsay listed her top 9 something corporate songs of all time.
This song is the most beautiful lullaby I've ever heard in my entire life. I love when it's just Andrew and his piano. This song makes my heart ache every single time I hear it.
In reading comments around other places around the internet about this song, I do see it referred to as a lullaby by several people, and I'm not sure if that's just an unconscious thought based on that one lyric, or if people really feel like this sounds like a lullaby. I've mentioned that mid-tempo range that makes up a lot of the sound of the North album before, and As You Sleep is a prime example. Not a hard-rocking anthem, but not exactly a ballad either. Somewhere in between. I guess it's closer to a ballad than anything else. I've watched several YouTube videos of people playing this song. Some are better than others, some are downright impressive. I am fascinated, though, by how fast your fingers have to move on the piano to keep pace with this song. For most of the original recording, the guitar in the song is more of a backup for the rest of the instruments, which already tells you something different about what you heard on the previous album. There does seem to be another instrument in the background in addition to the guitar that I can't quite identify. I do know there's a cello elsewhere on the album, and it sounds like there are strings in this song, but there aren't strings credited in the liner notes specific to this song, so I'm not sure. The guitar does become a little bit more up front and center toward the end of the chorus and even leading to the second chorus, though. If ever I want to reminisce or reflect on past times in my life, this is one of my go-to songs. It's been proven that music can activate memories and past emotions in the brain, and this song does both for me. This song is a time machine for me. It takes me back to a very specific place and time in my life that I'll never be in again, but in a way, I can go back to whenever I want to. I truly hope that you have songs like that in your own life. I do have to admit, though, a lot of times when I hear this song, it's really hard not to listen to the rest of the North album after this one finishes. It just feels so natural. So let's talk lyrics. Close your eyes. I love how this song starts with only the lyric and the music holds off until the second line. That line alone sets a tone for this entire album and the song itself. When I hear people say the words close your eyes, I can't not think of this song, though. The fact that he mentions swimming in the second line, and I spent a lot of time in and around the ocean in Hawaii, obviously helps make the connection in the song for me as well. I also mentioned the lullabies line, but I always saw that as more of a general singing to myself or to the island while most people were sleeping. So I guess lullaby makes sense in this case. On those nights and weekends that I never wanted to end out there, I didn't want to see the morning because I knew what it would mean. The night would be over. So when Andrew sings, "Don't You Wake Up Yet," that's how I saw it. I didn't want the morning to come. The "singing my thoughts back to me" line, of course, reminds me of singing in the car, because let's face it, I was singing to a lot of the album that I could already identify with through these lyrics. The night sky fading red reminds me of the nights that didn't end until morning sometimes. I watched the sunrise more than a few times there, obviously. And of course that chorus, "But as you sleep and no one is listening, I will lift you off your feet. I'll keep you from sinking. Don't you wake up yet, 'cause soon I'll be leaving you. Soon I'll be leaving you, but you won't be leaving me." I feel like I already covered my thoughts on those lines pretty thoroughly. Though the opening line is a close second, my favorite part of the song must be the piano leading to the chorus and throughout. Although I do love every part of the song, it's a perfect song. I do find that the most inspiring and emotional part of it for me is that piano. Even when I'm not singing along to the chorus, I'm taking in all that piano and feeling in every part of my bones. So there are some other versions out there that I mentioned. I mentioned the piano-only version from Rolling Stone in 2003 and the Live at the Ventura version. But I also found a pretty good cover of this song on YouTube. From a pretty unique source, I must say. I had to dig pretty deep to find it, too. Turns out there's a music school in Tampa, Florida called Scamato, where their students not only learn and create original music, but they do covers as well. What's crazy to me is that these two different groups of young students have performed As You Sleep as part of their annual showcase both in 2017 and 2018. I can see why it would be a good demonstration of not only vocals and piano, but also that full band sound with all the instrumentalists working in tandem with one another. I'll post the one of the two that I like better of those links. I was really impressed by it. I was surprised at first by the lack of a guitar in this live cover, but then again, I didn't really miss the guitar as much as I would have expected. The vocals, piano, bass guitar, and drums were all on point. Some final thoughts here. I remember working as a manager in a restaurant in 2004 after I moved back to Michigan from Hawaii, and I worked with a lot of people that were on average about 5 to 8 years younger than me. Some of them had similar music tastes to me, but I remember this one guy who was as big a fan as I was of Something Corporate's Leaving Through the Window, and he told me that North just wasn't his thing. That shocked me, because my opinion was that it was their most prolific work, and I still believe that. I don't know if it was the age difference or what we were each looking for in music at the time, or maybe I was just more connected through the memories I have with this one. But this song still means the world to me to this day. I do remember bringing that idea up to Mike Valdez on our Dark Blue episode, and his theory was that the album was ahead of its time. So ahead of its time that it even took years for hardcore Something Corporate fans to realize how good it was. I think he was right, but let me know what you think about that. From my November 16th, 2004 live journal entry. Tonight, I listened to Something Corporate's North. It came out almost exactly a year ago, and it's probably the best album that 2003 ever saw by far. It not only reminds me of last winter, preparing to move to Hawaii, but it also reminds me of living in Hawaii and leaving it behind. As You Sleep reminds me so much of driving back to Ewa Beach from Honolulu late at night. I really enjoyed that peaceful half-hour drive with the windows rolled down, looking at the city lights become out-of-city stars. I will forever think of that drive and that place when I hear this song. And I gotta say, 17 years after I wrote that, I still feel the same way. If you have a story about how one of Andrew McMahon's songs has impacted your life, I'd love for you to guest on the show so we can all hear about it. Email somethinginthewilderness@gmail.com and we'll set up a time to talk. And on a separate note, I'll be drawing a name very soon for the t-shirt contest. All you have to do is write a review for the show on any app, including Apple Podcasts, then screenshot it and either email it to me or DM it to me on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. Thank you so much for listening to me pour my heart out and make this connection between emotion and the life experiences that I get to relive through music. Andrew McMahon is one of the many artists that have made my life better through the music he's written and performed. Soon I'll be leaving you, but you won't be leaving me.